Putin pulling out of the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe and intensifying his aggression in Ukraine. It's only a matter of time before NATO takes a firmer stance against Russia. In the event of an all-out war, the land forces on both sides will play a pivotal role in deciding the victor. But whose ground forces are more powerful, Russia's or NATO's? Let's start with the Russian army. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia was no longer considered a major military force, and it was easy to see why. The country had more important issues, such as reforming the society and transitioning from decades of communism. Military strength wasn't Russia's priority in the post-Cold War period. Instead, the government turned its attention to economic development. But as Russia's economy grew, so did its ability to upgrade its military and reassert its position as one of the most formidable ground forces on the planet, theoretically speaking anyway. Increased funding started in 1999 after Russia earned billions from oil. This had a tremendous impact on the military budget, which jumped from just over 140 billion rubles in 2000 to nearly 220 billion rubles just a year later. Much of the funding was allocated to personnel, including significant pay hikes and professional training programs. On top of that, Russia ramped up its investment in research and development to try to make up lost ground during the reforms. High military spending has continued throughout the 21st century, with one man behind it all, Vladimir Putin. Whether as prime minister or president, he's been one of the most vocal supporters of bolstering the country's ground forces, and his impact has left an indelible mark on Russia's military. The number of active personnel jumped from 360,000 in 1998 to more than 1 million. His primary motivation seemed to be to bolster his country's defenses, but in 2022, and much earlier in some experts' eyes, it became clear that Putin had an ulterior motive, invading Ukraine. The future will tell if the invasion will pay off, but one thing is for sure, the war has put a significant dent in Russia's armed forces. According to some estimates, more than 50,000 Russian soldiers have died in Ukraine. The longer this war lasts, the larger the number of Russian casualties. And if Putin keeps provoking NATO or makes a move on the alliance, the lives lost compromise his position. Besides its intimidating, although shrinking personnel, we must also consider Russia's land equipment to determine if it's ready to clash with NATO. Since the dissolution of the USSR, Russia's military equipment has pretty much had the same trajectory as its military personnel. Right before the collapse of the Soviet Union, the country had massive supplies of tanks, armored vehicles, and other equipment. Its storage capacity was vast, which is one of the reasons many considered any land invasion of Russia virtually impossible. However, once the USSR fell apart, Russia had only outdated low-category units that couldn't match the advanced military gear of NATO and other formidable alliances at the time. Newly independent nations seized most of the modern equipment, which crippled Russia's army. The military landscape continued to punish Russia, mainly due to reforms and strict financial measures that deprived the defense budget of much-needed investment. Before Putin came to power, the country only purchased approximately 30 fighting infantry vehicles, or BMPs as they're known in Russia, and about 10 tanks per year. If the nation would have maintained such an abysmal rate, it would never again have been able to compete with NATO. But Putin had other plans. His insistence on improving military personnel was accompanied by greater equipment spending. As a result, the country soon started buying new units, including Kurganets 25 Boomerang and Armata Universal Combat Platform. These amphibious infantry fighting vehicles helped remind the world that Russia's military wasn't ready to give up. Each vehicle has top-grade weapons that can help Russian ground forces advance through enemy territories more quickly. Take the Armata Universal Combat Platform as an example. It comes with a mighty externally mounted 125mm gun that can penetrate thick armor and shower opponent troops to provide cover fire for land soldiers. The weapon can even fire laser-guided missiles. There's also a Cornet D anti-low-flying helicopter and anti-tank warhead that can reach targets of up to 39,000 feet away. As the cherry on top, the Armata boasts secondary armament in the form of a 7.62 and 12.7mm 6P49 machine gun. By adding the Armata and other cutting-edge infantry combat vehicles, Russia greatly modernized its land forces. The days when it had to rely on outdated units that had been active for decades, like the BTR-80s and BMP-1, 2, or 3, were over. Apart from infantry combat vehicles, Russia had also upgraded its ground missile systems, and they haven't done so by simply buying the equipment. In recent years, the country has also demonstrated the full prowess of its military research and development technology. The investment has yielded some powerful dividends. Their research has yielded several high-end missile systems, one of which is the Iskander-E Tactical Ballistic Missile, or TBM system. Featuring multiple rocket launchers, the weapon has tremendous firepower and can obliterate targets over 310 miles away. It's also incredibly accurate and easily controllable due to Russia's advanced command and control automation. Then there's the tactical mobility of the Iskander-E. Designed for all-terrain purposes, the system can be transported and deployed practically anywhere, which can give Russia's ground forces the edge in many different environments. Given the flexible design of the Iskander, it's perfect for all kinds of nighttime and daytime missions. It doesn't even require survey support and site preparation, enabling it to engage enemy troops in a heartbeat. While the Iskander-E is powerful, Russia wouldn't be a major land force with just one rocket system. There are many other similar weapons in its arsenal, including the Tornado-G Multiple Launch Rocket System, or MLRS. By developing the Tornado-G MLRS, Russia showcased its commitment to replace or improve outdated Soviet-era weapons. This rocket system is a significant upgrade over its predecessor, the 122mm BM-21 launcher system based on the Ural 4320 or Kamaz trucks. Unlike the previous version, the Tornado-G is fully automatic. Featuring 40 launch tubes, the system can rain down hundreds of rockets within minutes in areas up to 18 miles away. Each tube is compatible with 122mm projectiles, a diameter that's proven its reliable and accurate design on multiple occasions. The Tornado-G is more efficient and potent than its predecessors, but it's also safer and less risky to operate. Previously, Russians had to deploy 6 men to fire their rocket systems, but the Tornado-G only takes 3. Thanks to the automated design, Russian soldiers no longer need to load the weapon from the rear manually. The entire process is automatic to greatly reduce casualties. Rocket systems weren't the only aging military equipment in Russia's toolbox. They also had a major problem with old, unreliable Soviet tanks they kept reusing with minimal efficiency. Putin understood the country couldn't seriously jeopardize any other nation, let alone a military powerhouse like NATO, which is why he commanded his defense experts to upgrade or replace the old tanks. And so they did, with impressive results. One of the tanks they improved was the legendary T-72B. Russia's released several modern versions of the tank, but the T-72B3 might be the most impressive unit. The refurbished tank features a new, more powerful engine, enhanced fire controls, and a sophisticated gunner's sight. All these features helped turn the T-72B3 into a highly precise and reliable war machine. Since its release in 2010, the T-72B3 has been used in several battlefields, including Syria and Ukraine. Russia's enemies were largely powerless against the weapon, but it had one major flaw: relatively weak armor. It made the tank extremely vulnerable, which is why the Russians fitted a new armor called the Contact 5. It neutralized most guided missiles, anti-tank rockets, and armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds. It also bolsters the rear part of the turret and features refurbished side skirts to elevate the tank's durability. Many other Russian battle tanks have the same technology, most notably the T-80U and the T-90. Overall, Russia's equipment might be even more important in its potential conflict against NATO than its manpower. Under Putin's regime, the country has added tens of thousands of tanks and other land machines that make up the bulk of its land forces. Currently, Russia has approximately 12,000 tanks, 24,000 armored fighting vehicles, and 18,000 artillery units. Even though the war in Ukraine has taken a toll on Russia's ground military, the effect hasn't been as severe as NATO hoped it would be. Shortly after the invasion, Russia faced an ammunition shortage but was able to overcome it. In fact, it managed to surpass its pre-war levels. Some officials even suggest that Russia is manufacturing about 7 times as much ammo as Western arms producers. All this makes some people believe that Russian land forces are ready for a potential war against NATO despite some setbacks. But is that really the case? To answer that, we need to take a closer look at NATO's ground military. In terms of numbers, NATO blows Russia out of the water in almost every aspect. The alliance has nearly 2.5 million active soldiers, more than twice as many as Russia. If need be, NATO can recruit over 2.7 million reserve personnel and choose from more than 200 million people who are available for military service. Compare that to Russia's 2 million reserve soldiers and 35 million citizens available for the army, and it's easy to see why NATO is superior in terms of manpower. NATO's supremacy regarding the number of soldiers cannot be denied. But what about its artillery, its tanks, and its armored fighting vehicles? As it turns out, the playing field is much more even in this respect. NATO has around 2,000 more tanks and 60,000 more artillery fighting vehicles than Russia. The scale is tipped the other way in terms of artillery. with Russia edging out NATO by approximately 6,000 artillery units. But although Russia can match and outperform NATO in some aspects of land force equipment, it pales in comparison technology-wise. Take NATO's infantry combat vehicles as an example. Unlike Russia, NATO has few outdated vehicles. Instead, most of the members of the alliance have modernized their arsenal, which is now home to some of the most intimidating armored vehicles on the planet. Perhaps the best way to demonstrate this is to take a look at the Puma, German engineering at its finest. The Puma is widely regarded as the most heavily protected infantry fighting vehicle on the globe. Featuring next-gen modular add-on armor, it's well protected from projectiles up to 125 millimeters in diameter. Even if the missile lands in the front of the vehicle, the Puma should come out unscathed. It can even survive powerful mine blasts up to 22 pounds of TNT and features a sophisticated warning system that reduces the risk of hits. That's not the only instance of NATO's cutting-edge equipment. Its ground forces can utilize another German wonder, the Lynx KF-41. It's just as heavy as the Puma and has a convenient modular design that can adapt the vehicle to different battle scenarios. For example, NATO can configure the machine as a standard infantry fighting vehicle, recovery and repair vehicle, armored ambulance, and armored reconnaissance vehicle. It only takes about 8 hours in field conditions to tweak the machine and prepare it for different combat challenges. Although Russia has an accurate missile system, it might not be enough to take out the KF-41. Besides its bulky frame, it has front arc reinforcements that allow it to withstand 120 and 125 millimeter projectiles. Considering the highly sophisticated design of NATO's infantry combat vehicles and their sheer number, the military edge they provide is undeniable. Their speedy, modular design allows land forces to cover more ground rapidly without worrying about large missiles and other threats. And if NATO troops need additional support, they'll receive them in the form of tanks. To say NATO excels in this category would be an understatement. While the numbers are close, 12,000 Russian tanks versus 14,000 NATO tanks, the technology once again favors NATO. Russia has dramatically upgraded its tanks, but NATO is still superior in this regard, thanks to several battle-tested models, one of which is Germany's Leopard 2A7A1. The first version of this tank was introduced in 1979 and was used in numerous wars, including in Afghanistan and Syria. It's even made a grand entry in the Ukraine war, supporting land troops against mighty Russian machines and holding them back on many fronts. Over the years, the Leopard 2 has received a range of upgrades. The most advanced version is the Leopard 2A7A1. It's a prime example of NATO's readiness for urban and conventional warfare threats. Fitted with robust composite front armor made of nanoceramics and other sublime materials, it's virtually impregnable when facing most 120mm and 125mm projectiles. The tank even has a modular design that allows NATO soldiers to replace any damaged modules during battles. It gets even better from there. Israel, known for its state-of-the-art military technology, has lent its trophy protection system that destroys incoming anti-tank rounds, missiles, and anti-tank rockets. Trophy also enables the crew to pinpoint enemy locations. Last but not least, the 2A7A1 is protected on all sides from landmines and other explosive devices. The story of NATO's next-level technology doesn't end there. To maximize safety for the ground troops and obliterate enemies, the alliance equips most of their infantry fighting vehicles and missile systems with advanced sights. The devices normally feature intuitive thermal imagery and advanced fire control systems that make their weapons more accurate across longer distances. Some even have programmable ammunition modes that engage their targets within buildings and behind cover. The programmable ammo can sometimes take down helicopters from a few miles away to eliminate the need for soldiers' intervention. And NATO can flex its muscles in other areas as well. We've mentioned that Russia has taken its military research and development technology to a whole new level, but it's still behind NATO in this department. To protect land forces from projectiles, NATO often experiments with different materials. Besides nanoceramics, depleted uranium has demonstrated its effectiveness several times. Many of NATO's vehicles have depleted uranium-reinforced armor to increase survivability in the most challenging conditions. Speaking of survivability, some NATO equipment runs top-quality engines that can withstand harsh terrains and inclement weather. The alliance often uses gas turbine engines to maximize performance and reliability. It also has an optimal power-to-weight ratio and minimal start-up shutdown times, which is essential when moving near enemy outposts. Now, most debates about Russia and NATO land forces would end here, given the alliance's superiority in terms of numbers and technology. But keep in mind that a potential war between the two sides wouldn't be your standard conflict. The size of the opponents is one of the reasons why that's the case, but there's an even more important issue. Are individual NATO members willing to fight Russia? Many are skeptical about this, claiming that only two member states, France and the UK, would fight Russia. There are several reasons for this. First, the world has only recently endured a global pandemic that took millions of lives. It also crippled economies, many of which are NATO members. Like post-Soviet Russia, the priority of these countries is to get their economies back on track, not wage war against military superpowers like Russia. Second, there's another war raging as we speak. After Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, the IDF responded viciously, dropping tens of thousands of bombs on Gaza in their efforts to wipe out the terrorist group. Some NATO members have provided billions of funding for Israel and sent thousands of artillery units to help the country prevail. Their willingness to start another even larger war if Putin keeps advancing in Ukraine might be doubtful. And third, NATO militaries aren't exactly known for successful interventions. Their presence in Afghanistan, the Balkans, and many other regions left a lot to be desired, as those areas are still potential warfare hotspots despite NATO's involvement. The inability of NATO to facilitate a quick resolution in different countries may have left many member states wondering if war against Russia would do any good. While there's some merit to these claims, the reality shows that Europeans and the rest of NATO might just respond resolutely to Putin's aggression, especially if he sets his sights on one of their allies. According to a survey of public opinion on the war in Ukraine, 76% of Europeans disapprove of Putin's invasion. The resentment for his regime may have even grown after the horrific images of the destruction on the streets of Ukraine. So it's safe to say that the war has had a galvanizing effect on some NATO members. It's not too hard to imagine what'll happen if Putin progresses further west, or in the worst-case scenario, assaults a NATO state. Other members will likely rally to support the invaded country, and thanks to more personnel and better technology, stop Russia in its tracks. Some members might even be able to fend for themselves and hold Putin back as long as Ukraine has, or even longer. One of these states is Poland. If an all-out war breaks out, Poland will probably be NATO's first line of defense. Despite Russia's supremacy when it comes to numbers, Poland might just hold its own against the former Soviet giant, with about 150,000 active troops. The country also aims to double its reserves, which would inevitably delay Russia's progress until the rest of NATO provides enough support to drive Russia out. The battle would probably play out in the same fashion if Russia decided to go after Finland. The terrain would make it harder for NATO to send additional troops, but Finland would likely avoid facing Russia on the frontiers. In all likelihood, the Finnish would follow the Ukrainian recipe and retreat to the inner cities of neighboring countries, including Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. From there, NATO would have an easier time sending backup. Those are just some future projections of how the clash between NATO and Russia's land forces would unfold. In most, if not all scenarios, NATO's ground forces would handily defeat Russia. The alliance has more soldiers and more advanced battle-tested combat equipment. But if you only want to compare the ground troops from today's perspective, it's a landslide victory for NATO. With the bulk of the Russian army busy holding back Ukrainian counterattacks, NATO would simply plow through the remaining Russian forces. What do you think would happen if an all-out war broke out between Russia and NATO? Would Putin have an ace up his sleeve to make up for his inferior land forces, or would NATO prove too much for Russia? Let us know in the comments section below. Now go ahead and check out this video, or maybe this one instead.